Hello, people. In this particular episode, we're going to talk about a thing that I used to do on a fairly regular basis, landing in uncoupled mode. It allows you to be a little bit smoother with your landing and actually look like you know what you're doing, but there's a certain amount of practice involved in it. I wanted to be on the day side of a planet. We're going to head down to the surface here and we're going to give it a try. I have no idea what the necropolis is. Doesn't seem like the sort of place I'd want to go to. But it quantumed me into an area that...
Quantum drive is now off.
that seems to have some flat ground. Okay, there's something going on here. I don't have proper control. There we go. Okay, so we're going to drop down to ground level. Today I'm flying the Anvil Pisces. It's a nice small ship. It's good for practicing this sort of thing. And we're going to see how it works out. I got head tracking active. I'm going to turn off the chat just so as not to be distracting. Now I've also got the vector indicator permanently on. That's that little X-shaped icon just above my cursor, or reticule rather. Now we're in a fairly steep dive here. About 4,500 meters. We want to find a place that's not much for mountains and such for practicing this. And ideally not much for forests and trees and stuff that are going to kill us. Okay, this seems like a decent enough area. It's nice and flat. Now, first thing we want to do is put the landing gear down. When you put the landing gear down, it will kind of lock on your vector indicator. And we're going to get some altitude, so that we're coming in a little steeper to simulate how you might want to do a landing. So what you do is you get down to about maybe 30 meters a second. Put your vector indicator where you want your landing to be, and then you simply go into decoupled. And you can see that the coupled light turned off on the left hand side of the display, so that when I pitch up I am still heading for that same area on the ground. And I'm going to go maybe 2 to 5 degrees up, and I'm going to go to the external view. You can see we're dropping down. And you also need to know what your space brake is in addition to your decoupled key. And just before you get to the ground, you use your space brake. Slows you down. And then you're basically down. And it's all one movement as opposed to your standard landing, which is typically something more along the lines of you rocket out to where you want to be, then you stop, then you drop down to the ground. Typically a little harder than you want to hit. Now, even if you're using that same technique, let's just back up and get lined up here again. You can still go into decoupled. So we're moving along. We go decoupled. Now I put a little bit of down onto it, and I'm dropping down as I'm moving forward. But then I can go back on the thrusters a little bit. Space brake if I think I need to. And then you do a nice gentle landing. And it actually looks like you got some clue what you're doing. So the only controls you need to set up for this is the The decoupled switch, you'll want to know exactly what your axis is for that. And your space brake. So we go into decoupled, slow it down, start putting us into a bit of a drop. Use a little bit of backward thrust to stop our forward velocity. And then just before we touch, we space brake. And that's it. You're down, you're nice and smooth. Eventually you can get into the habit of using this for landing on landing pads. You can use it for even getting into hangars. Now, to go into a hangar, you need to be a little bit more confident with your flying. But you know what? I'm feeling crazy tonight, so why don't we attempt that? Oh, the other thing that's very important, and I'm going to go back to the cockpit view for this, is if your landing gear is up, we got the velocity or the vector indicator. We're nice and slow. As soon as I go into decoupled, that thing is going to start to drop because it's not holding me back up in the air. However, if the landing gear is down and I go to decoupled, it'll hold exactly where it was. Pull up the nose. And nice and smooth. And this also works for fairly steep descents too. Okay, I'm not exactly sure why the indicator didn't display. But let's try that a second time. Bring the indicator up. You don't want to do this crazy fast because that's going to result in an explosion and a respawn. And if you think you're coming in too fast, you can always just use a space brake, watch your speed. Typically I'll try to be about 20 meters a second on the approach here. Oh, and my indicator is way off there. So I can strafe down a little bit to reposition it. I don't know exactly what the zero is on the ground altitude here. I suspect it's probably not zero. We're only moving at 10 meters a second, so I could probably take the impact. And then when I'm starting to get close enough that I think I'm pretty much on the ground, then I'll pitch up. And slow us down that last little bit for a nice gentle touchdown. And that's it. That is all that's involved to it. Just because I'm feeling a little bit crazy, I'm going to try and do a landing at New Babbage with that. Shouldn't take more than a minute or three to get over the other side of the planet. Okay, it says it's a straight shot. I don't believe it, but maybe it is.
Quantum drive is now.
Now, it was dark side of the planet when I left, so that's going to make it a little bit challenging as well. But if I die, I'll respawn right at the hospital here.
Quantum drive is now off.
Alright, where's the spaceport? Off in a distance here. And having that vector indicator on all the time is extremely helpful, I find. Because there's a little premature in dropping the speed. I don't know if it's going to give me a top loading hangar or a side loading.
Please proceed to assigned landing bay.
I wish I'd put those markers out a little bit more distant, but what we got is what we got. Or maybe just put them out at all. Ah, there we go. Looks as though we got a side loader. Gear down.
Landing gear deployed.
Okay, now you want to be reasonably well lined up for this. This makes things faster, but let's not get crazy here. And usually I don't go decoupled until I'm pretty positive I'm going to get clear inside of the hangar. That seems to be reasonably well aligned. And we're decoupled. Alright, well, we're down. We didn't get killed. I'm going to call that a win. Anyways, that's it for this video. If you think this is an interesting landing technique that makes you look a little bit more skilled than perhaps you actually are, make sure you know what your controls are for decoupled, for space brake, and head on out and practice. And hopefully I'll see you out in the verse. Come back for the next video.